everybody? Welcome to another Punk Perspectives. Today, I'm very excited. I got Ben Weasel from Screeching Weasel here. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right, so I wanted to talk about, I guess, a couple of songs today since I, got you. I guess one, I want to ask you about my gateway song to you guys from the FAT compilation when I first found you, called "Dummy Up." So I guess first questions on that song. I guess what do you remember about it? Was music first, lyrics first? What's your writing style with that song?
Uh, well, I always do the music first. I wrote that one from a title. So the song title, which I do sometimes, I keep a list of titles and so yeah, that the melody and the music always comes first, and then the lyric. I mean, I think I had the idea to do what I did with the lyric, where it's really just a litany um, of phrases and words for shutting up, especially if you were under investigation or something like that. I don't know why. I guess I thought it was funny at the time.
Okay, cool. So going into that, so music always kind of comes first from you, but you first thought of the title and then made the lyrics to match the title.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. And you're not for sure. So it wasn't like any like real life thing, like being arrested or something. It was
No,
no.
no, no. It was all made up. It was just, kind of a silly little thing, an exercise in trying to write however many verses, 3 verses, I think, um, uh, that all had the same theme without repeating lines.
Okay, yeah, and so I'll probably read the lyrics back to you here in a minute, which is always an awkward thing I love to do. But it's funny. This is why I'm happy I do these things because exactly like you said, people can interpret music so differently. To when I was in freshman in high school, when I was like first, hearing it on the comp, I was in trouble by school and stuff. And those lyrics in there was like, "Yeah, fuck you. You can't make me say anything. Like I'll just be quiet. You don't got." And that's why I was so curious where it came from. To where I would play this song on that comp in and in and out until I finally got the album, which I want to ask you about on the album part two real quick. Because it says you have two versions of it. You have this one, and then there's an original artwork which you can see in the inlay. It kind of shows
Yes.
why the change when you redid it.
Um, we remixed it and threw some songs on there that we had recorded at that session, but I think some of them had been on a compilation that, along with the guitarist, we had our own record label. So we put those songs on a compilation, and I think there was maybe 1 or 2 outtakes as well. I honestly can't remember, but the record was different enough that we figured I really like the original art.
Mhm.
Um, but I also like the reissue art, which was done by Nate Fierro. And um, I think it was just, a way to distinguish it between the new version and the original version.
Okay, yeah. Because yeah, the artwork kicks ass. In both of them, but I think the newer version was yeah, definitely looks more like the Television City Dream. You got the TV there with the skeleton on fire, and then you're right. I wanted what's cool is usually when bands do that, the bonus tracks or the extra intakes just go at the end, like you get the album. And but it seemed like it was very thoughtful in the placement of where you put the new song. Like Video Now came right after Dummy Up, which that wasn't how that flowed before.
Yeah, that was intentional. I don't, we were adding enough song, and even if, I wouldn't just tack it on the end. I mean, I just basically resequenced the thing in a way. It was the same sequence, but as though those songs were part of the original album, just because, I'm always looking for a certain, I want everything to flow from one song to the other in a way that's pleasing to the ear. So kind of just throwing them on the end is just really treating it as an afterthought. Whereas my idea was, let's make the album, let's mix it the way it really ought to be mixed in order to hear everything properly. And then let's put these songs in a way where it still feels like an album.
Mhm. That's cool to think about. So I guess the question on that would be if you I guess if you could have done the album originally with those, is that kind of how you would have wanted the album originally with those tracks in there? Is that how you first envisioned it? Or
There were songs, there was at least one song that was meant for the record, and we just couldn't get it right. And that song was, I think the title ended up being My Own World. And so that was left off, and I believe we finished it at another time. I had a bridge with a vocal on it that I didn't think was working. And so eventually we mended that by putting a guitar solo over that instead.
mm,
Um, and that was just something that I wrote real quick. It's not really even a solo, but it's a really simple thing. And that seemed to uh, solve the problem. So, once we did that, then I liked the song a lot more. But by that point, the album was already out. So obviously it was too late to put it on there. So that was
yeah.
one that I definitely thought should be heard. And I thought, had it been on the record, it would have been one of the better songs on there.
Yeah, yeah, and that's this album, of course, my favorite, like I said, was The Gateway. And it was through the comp. So how does that go? Like, is it someone from FAT like saying, hey, can we have a song? Or do they say we like this song? Can we take it? How does that whole
I, if you hadn't told me, I wouldn't even remember that it was on a comp. I couldn't tell you the name of the comp.
okay.
And I think they probably came to us and said, either said, "Hey, what song do you want to put on here?" or "Can we put on this song?" I honestly don't remember.
Uh, so it's very relaxed going through that process, I guess, with getting on comps and stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, Fat, I think, was the only label that was still doing comps. I mean, maybe not the only one, but they were already dying out at that time. And really, they weren't so much comps as they were samplers. Uh,
Mhm,
and so I didn't really, I mean, I probably at the time would have just deferred to their judgment. And,
mhm.
if they asked me if I had a preference, I might say it, but I don't think I really would have cared which one they put on.
Okay. Yeah, and I like to notice that "Dummy Up," like I said, was one of my favorites. To where like, and the lyrics in there, "Can't make you tell the truth." Like, it's so funny because it meant so much to me going through it. And so I guess, do you know how long of a sit down of writing it? Did it go through revisions? Did it take you a week? Like, how long do it takes you to write lyrics? And for that song, you can remember.
Um, I can't remember. I'd like to tell you an entertaining story about it. I can't remember. I would say that lyrics are the easy part for me.
Yeah.
More so now, maybe than back then, but I'm interested in getting the music right and the melody right and the construction of the song right. So once that's done, then the lyric seems to me the easy part because typically what happens when you're doing a melody over and over, either playing it or more often for me, it's just in my head and I'm carrying that around with me all day, then inevitably you will come up with some words. Sometimes if a song comes to me in a dream, a lyric will be with that and it doesn't really make a ton of sense. And sometimes I keep that even though it doesn't really make sense. Sometimes I change it. Um, but because there's another song on that album where I did that, Speed of Mutation. And it doesn't really, I think in the dream I had, it was like the speed of changes or something like that, that made even less sense. But that dictated the lyric of the song. Um, so typically, as I'm going over um, melodies and stuff like that, and the song is running through my head over and over before I've completed lyrics, and sometimes before I've even completed all of the song, then little lines will pop up here and there. And then I might make notes. Like with a song like that, I'm guessing I probably made a bunch of notes as things occurred to me. Just little, little, I can't even remember most of the lyrics for that because I don't think we've ever played it live, but like keep it zipped, stuff like that. I would have made little notes about lines like that. And, and then if they would fit, I'd use them. If not, I wouldn't. Because really I'm more interested um, in the sound of the words than the words themselves. So the first thing is the sound, and then not just the sound, but the flow of it. So it has a very natural, that's the idea I think that anybody gets into when they're writing songs. You want things to have a sound as though it always existed and it was completely natural. You want the song to sound like you wrote it, and what you're hearing on the record is virtually, what would have been recorded right after you wrote it if the band had been in the room. So you're trying to create that illusion, and the way you do it with a song in large part, is by um, is by uh, consciously creating a flow with the lyric. And from my point of view anyway, the how it sounds is more important than what it says. And the challenge is how to get it to sound really right, and then hopefully be able to work with that so that the lyric actually makes sense and the idea of the lyric also flows. But that is not the primary, like I don't sit down with an idea um, lyrically or subject wise. Even when I'm writing from a title, I'm just using that title as a jumping off point. So the actual idea of the lyric is more of a thing that comes out of necessity. I mean, I could be singing foreign words or just nonsense words, and you can make that work. I mean, I think we all do that all the time when we're just putting down a melody of a song. You'll just kind of make up words or put lines in there that you may end up using, you may not, but it's just to convey to other people if they're listening to it, like other musicians in the band, or to yourself, so that you remember. You're just really trying to convey the the melody and the rhythm of of the uh, the vocal or the cadence.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, breaking it down, um, to where, okay. Um, yeah, and so it's funny too, it's like when we go through this, and so, and I guess I'm kind of curious, is you kind of maybe hinted at it. Was this the intention of the lyrics, I guess, when you wrote Dummy Up If You Can Remember, was it kind of coming more in like a satirical scenario, or were you trying to just like put yourself in like a, yeah, like a middle finger to like the system in a way?
Uh, yeah, I mean, it was satirical for sure. I mean, some of the first rock music that I can remember falling in love with was novelty songs. So, I mean, I suppose that's, one example out of probably a lot of our songs that um, that was written kind of from that perspective of being a novelty song. But I mean, it is also continuing the theme. Like, what's the Circle Jerk song that's the same? Deny Everything.
Hmm.
So, so it's that same thing. Like, just keep your mouth shut, don't say anything, and if you're busted, just keep
Mhm.
it zipped and make them do all the work.
Yeah, they can't make you tell the truth. Let
Yeah.
me read the lyrics real fast, then we can jump to what we hate. But just in case I have any questions on the lyrics or anything that jogs your mind. So, dummy up. It starts off, they want the truth, but they keep on drawing blanks. Dummy up. They torture you. You're not giving up the facts. Dummy up. They can't make you tell the truth. They can't make you tell the truth, and it kind of continues on. Two, make sure I'm on the right spot here. Two can't write a decent tune. Number three.
Oh,
Oh,
that's a different lyric.
yeah, I messed up. Sorry, I'm trying to read this. It's on this like little sheet here, man.
Yeah, I know it's ridiculous.
um, boom, boom, boom. Um, want to.
I think the second verse, maybe it's the third, but the second verse I want to say starts keep it zipped.
Ask if you're a spy dummy. Hold your tongue when they say you're FBI. Dummy up. They can't make you tell the truth. They can't make you tell the truth. Yeah, and then here we go. What they can't tell you what to do. Keep it zipped when they ask for um, microfilm. Dummy up. Plead the fifth, and that was the part I think. Pleading the fifth part is where like I really was like as a kid into that portion. Then you'll be out there really soon. Dummy up. They can't make you tell the truth. And then that's it. So I
Uh,
guess rereading it and I was broken. I'm sorry reading it like that to you. But
well, no, I guess there's also, I mean, it sounds like it was kind of like a spy thing.
mhm.
It's a long time ago. I don't really remember, but
Yeah,
it was definitely kind of a gimmicky novelty song approach. Uh, and it was just, yeah, there wasn't really any meaning to it.
yeah. And I guess when I was like young listening to it, it felt like it was so much more like, oh man, like Ben Weasel was probably like, under investigation. Who knows what kind of shit it was? But it was like, yeah, this like thing, like they can't make you. And then you repeat that over, and the music really expresses that emotion. And maybe, and I probably should have interpreted it more as satire, but when I was getting in trouble and stuff, that's like that was I held that song to a high standard. So I was like, yeah, fucking. They can't. It's all true. It is all true, right? You got the fifth. You silence is your protection, etc. But
I mean, people, one of the problems with talking about, so I used to love to talk about songs and I
Mhm.
like it less so now because one of the problems with it is that you shatter the illusion. And it's one thing if somebody thinks like, you wrote a lyric that is um, glorifying something that you're completely against. I mean, if it's that kind of misinterpretation, then I think you do want to clarify it. But by and large, people are allowed to, and I would even go as far as to say I encourage them to take it however they want it. So I think it's perfectly, I mean, when you say, well, I probably should have interpreted it this way or that, I would say no. I would say you interpreted the song exactly the way you should have at that time in your life and with your circumstances in life. I mean, I not only think there's nothing wrong with that, I think that's kind of what songs are supposed to do. I mean, that's what art is supposed to do if we want to call what I do art. But um, but it's not supposed to be like the writer's intention is not should not be of really big importance to the listener. Like the listener is supposed to take it in and actively through their own mind and their own thoughts and experiences then decide what it means to them. So it's kind of like if you read a piece of fiction, if you read a novel, you're, even though you're reading literal words, um, you are part of the process of creating a story because you're seeing pictures in your mind and you're envisioning these places and people, which is one of the reasons, it's a bad thing to kind of over describe when you're writing a novel, because you want to leave it as much as possible up to the reader. And then it's a participatory experience. It's not just you're being told a story and being given information and taking it in, but you're becoming involved in the telling of it, actually. So I think it's the same uh, kind of thing with songs. And I mean, I hear all the time, like people who will say, "Oh yeah, they think this song is about this or that," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's not what I had in mind at all when I wrote it." But I also, I don't correct them unless they specifically ask, is that what it's about? And I don't even like doing that because it's like, man, I wrote it, I did my thing, and now it's out there and it's up to you. I own it, in the sense that I own the intellectual property, but I don't own it in the greater sense of the word. Like every person who gets something out of it owns their version of it.
Fucking love that, man. And that's why I like doing this kind of thing is I like finding out like exactly what you said, once you make it, it is art, and it's how it can affect someone's emotions up at that time, even though maybe the writer at the time, the people that created it was just like satire or whatever, and how much that process stuff I think is what I love about music and how everyone can feel it differently. Which is funny. I want to jump into the next one now because it's funny is when it kind of turns around and this song is kind of one reason why I want to pick it is it kind of got some Instagram or social media fame again, where punk rock police almost wants to like get upset about your own lyrics, which one, they have no idea what the fuck you meant when you were writing it, which is why I want to ask you. But uh,
Right.
that's a little awkward too, is when people kind of come back and say your lyrics meant something that they, do you know what I mean? Like, what does that feel like?
Yeah, no, I mean, that song in particular, somebody on the internet was like quoting that to me in a gotcha kind of way.
Mhm.
And I was, um, I mean, it's kind of cringy because it's like, buddy, you completely misunderstood that song in the first place. Like if you think like I'm a hypocrite because I became what I hate. That's not remotely the point of that song. I mean, it's completely missing the mark by 180 degrees. So the song was actually, and it's funny, I was so young when I wrote it, but I felt old. And
Mm,
there were people who seemed so much younger than me, but were really only a few years younger, who kind of, took on this attitude uh, of like like you can't. I mean, it was just a pervasive attitude in punk at the time, and it still is in certain circles, mostly internet circles.
yeah.
But this attitude that if you change your opinion on anything, or if you kind of grow and learn and look at things in a different light, that you're selling out. And like the ideal human being is one who develops their convictions and their beliefs in their teenage years, and then that never wavers throughout their whole life. And of course, and I understood, even as, when I wrote that when I was like 22, I understood that that's insanity. And that if you're 50 years old and you still look at the world the way you did when you're 18, that's pathetic. That's not a way to live. So that's what the song is about. It's like we all, if we're lucky, become what we hate, because we didn't know as much as we thought we did when we were young. So like I was 22 when I wrote that, and I was kind of reflecting back to when I was 17 or 18 and thought I had everything figured out. And now I'm entering a point in my life at in my early 20s where I'm going, oh yeah, here's another thing I was wrong about, or here's another thing I didn't understand that I thought I understood completely. I mean, that's just the part of the process of growing up. And um, and so it's kind of spoken as a rebuke to the kind of people um, that would have you live your life in this kind of suspended animation state where you never waver and nothing ever changes and all that kind of thing. So like I think of Tim Yohannan, who's at Maximum Rock and Roll, and I remember somebody said something about him once, one of his peers, and it struck me, not because it's necessarily true, but it seemed true to me at the time. He said, Tim uh, was a communist, a Marxist in college, and read all about that and everything. He said, Tim hasn't read anything since, and he's still that exact. He still holds those same beliefs, and in some circles, that's something um, to be applauded. Like, he really stuck by his guns or whatever. But the part that stuck with me was he hasn't read anything since then. And I thought, my God, that's just awful. Like I said, I don't know how true that was, but
Right.
that part of it stuck with me. And it was right around the time that that song was written. And I think that was probably where I was really beginning to feel a much stronger sense of alienation from kind of the punk rock scene or the conventional punk rock views and takes on everything.
Yeah. Well said, which is funny is like, yeah, in the punk rock circles, a lot of times it becomes this like they the fans, not everyone too. It's usually, I think, a small. I mean, first of all, I guess what stuck out for me being, what got me into punk rock music was probably being a misfit and feeling some of that alienation and like middle finger responses to a lot of things how society was at the time. And so, of course, in it, you're going to just get tons of different, views, anyways. Which So I'll ask you on this song, What We Hate. I think I already know you. Music always comes first, so that you already had the music down, right?
Yeah, and I think this is another one where I probably had the title
Okay,
first or some version of the title. So I was writing the lyric from that title, but yeah, the music came first and the melody.
yeah. Um, and then on the lyrics, I guess the one way it felt to me in a way, not to be like Zen or anything, but I guess kind of like what you said there, to like we're like all one, like we will become like what we like, it's like I guess a much like more analytical, like kind of like outside point of view, like even if we hate something that might become us later on. It was, and I want to read the lyrics, and I'll do it on my phone this time too, so it should be easier. Um, so the lyrics, though, I guess on this song was much more serious, not satirical. You wrote it in a much more serious state of mind.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um,
I
and
mean,
that's
this one is like, almost like speaking to our audience, I would say.
okay. That's good too, and that's funny because again, which like punk rock police, whatever. I just find it, and I should probably emphasize this too, so people that are listening kind of know what I'm talking about. Was people out there, there's Punk in the Park, which is fucking awesome, getting punk bands to kind of come together and be able to play everything. And whether it was the Collins or whoever, someone donated a couple $100 to Trump administration. So, which I find ironic, is they use Meta or Twitter, which
Yeah.
definitely donated way more to them
Yeah.
to express their upsetness about this. With it's just whatever. But I find that I wanted to ask you, like, what does that feel like? Yeah, when the lyrics, when they try to, when it sounds like in some ways you really like that they interpret things for their own, kind of like with me of Dummy Up in a way it sounds, but when they try and like criticize you fans for your lyrics or whatever, I guess, do you just take it in stride and laugh at it, or what's the?
Yeah, I mean, it's like it ends up being kind of Monty Python-esque, because there's something, for some reason, inherently absurd about activism in general. And I'm not an activist, and I'm against it. Like, if I don't, you know, I have gone through periods of my life where it's like, oh, I'll be part of a boycott, or even organize or help organize a boycott.
Mhm.
But I got over that pretty quick. It's very self-important, and really what it comes down to is, um, I have this opinion, but my opinion doesn't really matter. So I'm going to try to, corral a bunch of other people, so that my opinion kind of gets inflated and has more worth or more value or whatever. But it's funny how often it seems like inevitably, these causes just, start off silly and get sillier by the moment. So like there was a far left political group in Germany, the Baader Meinhof group, in the 70s.
Mm,
They were the I think they were also known as the Red Army Fraction, um, or uh,
yeah.
or they had something to do with each other. It's been quite a while since I read about them, but it was just kind of one. It was like Keystone Cops, Three Stooges type stuff, of just like one bonehead move after another, where they screwed, they just screwed everything up that they were trying to do. Um, and I think that was a good example of that. Like, ooh, we got you, Ben Weasel, and we're hoisting you on your own petard by pointing out that you've become what you hate, and they, obviously completely missed the point, which was that, becoming what you hate is, a normal stage of life, and the implication in the lyric is supposed to be that, one, it's going to happen to you whether you like it or not, but also, um, I would hope that one of the takeaways from it would be, if it doesn't happen to you, then God help you, because
Yeah.
you become, they say there's no fool like an old fool, and and that's what you become if you don't become what you hate. I mean, it's really about a refusal to change, just out of sheer obstinance. And that, I think that's a terrible way to live, to feel shackled to something you once said or believed really strongly. Um, Emerson said, "A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds." And I think that says it all. So, if that doesn't say it all, then, another one of my favorite quotes, uh, Whitman, I believe, um, asked, do I contradict myself? Very well, then I contradict myself. I love that one. Um, Nobody really has the right to hold you to that. I mean, I guess if you're a politician, maybe, but you can't hold yourself to the standard of, I must never change. I must never grow. My opinion must never waver, because if it does, it means I've become the enemy. And that's kind of really the whole point of the song, is that you're going to become the enemy in the eyes of that very narrow-minded, uptight, um, really kind of inflexible, uh, teenage self. Like, if you take that into adulthood, you're you're a joke. And it's disappointing that so many people do it. Um, but you know, when I was singing that, it was just kind of like, and when I wrote the lyric, it was kind of like, well, you guys think you're better than us because you're a little younger and you're a little more, sure of yourselves. But there's going to come a time when that's not true. And really, the sad thing about it is that, um, I thought that would be true of most people, and I'm not so sure that's the case anymore. I think there are more
Worse.
people than I realized who will carry that into adulthood and who will um, die on that hill no matter what, no matter what they have to sacrifice, no matter what they have to um, give up in terms of their own growth and their own capacity to live life to its fullest. And that's a tragedy.
Yeah, it is scary too. Like, if you're not willing to like listen to other points of views, let yourself learn, even try to get into the point of like I'd say it was empathy to try and like really, get in the minds of other people and like you said, there's gonna have to be some self-learning. Like to be that arrogant to think that you got it right no matter what. And I think that would take us to almost a worse place. It would be less progressive than actually really, you know learning from each other and ourselves and like you said evolving because my freaking young self like I said I was dumb as a teenager and of course it felt right and stuff at the time but to be that same person growing up but like you said all that already but emphasizing it I guess and
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that it's a bad, I think it's not only not a bad thing to change your point of view, I think it's a good and necessary thing if you're going to um, live your life. And uh, and I don't, I mean, even at that age, I was put off by the kind of militant attitude in punk.
mhm.
And I shared a lot of most of those political views. And from I was pretty far left at that time, but um, there was always a pretty large faction of people for whom I wasn't far left enough. And, in those days, not so much in the early 90s, but in the 80s when we were starting out, it was pretty easy to identify the bad guys because they were literally showing up to gigs with, swastikas on their clothes. So we had, these actual professed Nazis showing up at gigs. So you could look at that in such black and white terms, and who's going to argue with you? It was really easy to see that. But when the Nazis went away, instead of saying, because those of us who kind of came up at that time who were not really part of, a little too young to have been really intensely involved in the hardcore scene. So kind of, early 80s hardcore. We knew all that stuff and we liked a lot of that stuff, but that wasn't really our scene. So those of us who kind of, for lack of a better term, kind of had that Gilman Street thing, the mid to late 80s, where, a lot of it was either hardcore or crossover or college rock or kind of arty rock, but actual punk, like 3-chord, fun, silly punk was just not a thing. There were no bands like the Dickies around except the Dickies. There were no bands like the Ramones around except the Ramones. So we were kind of trying to um, capture some of, and when I say we, I mean my band in particular. I can't speak for any other band, but we were trying to capture some of that really fun, irreverent spirit of the stuff that we had cut our teeth on that was just, to my mind, some of the best music ever made. The Rosillos were another one, just really kind of fun, goofy stuff. and that attitude that we had was not like the attitude of many other people, which was we've got to fight the Nazis. Our attitude was we're going to laugh at them. And we won. We laughed them out of the punk rock scene. We didn't beat them out. We laughed them out. And it was no longer a thing. And not just Nazis, but people who like to just violence at shows. Like if you were into New York hardcore, straight edge, or whatever, at that time, there was still a lot of violence at shows. But at our shows, if you behaved like that, you were going to be mocked and laughed at. And so to my mind, I was happy to take the W and say, like, we got rid of that stuff. You're not taking your life in your hands if you go see Screeching Weasel or Green Day or the Queers or whoever.
Right.
Uh, but there were a lot of people who couldn't take the W, and it's like, well, there's no Nazis around anymore, but you did this, so you're a Nazi, right? So all these other things, and that's really what I see in mainstream culture now. I mean, we saw it back then too, where Reagan was a fascist and everybody was a Nazi. Um, but it's become mainstream now, and it's very disturbing to me because that was really the almost exclusive realm of like academics, um, anarchists, and like extreme left punk people. It was really a niche point of view to just kind of have this black and white view of the world, and anybody who disagrees with you is a Nazi. Like they don't just have a different opinion. They're not just wrong. They're evil.
Right.
Um, and and uh, and so that's kind of, when you get into punk, or when I got into punk when I first did, I was like, oh, this is awesome. I found something where I can do whatever I want. I don't have to be, insanely musically gifted. I don't have to have a great voice, and I can just do my thing and not have to worry about getting signed by a label or anything like that. I can just basically do it myself. Um, and anybody who's been in that situation quickly learns that what you think, what appears to be from the outside, this really kind of free spirited um, scene where you can actually be an individual, is, of course, the exact opposite of that. It's very rigid. It's very rules oriented. I remember the first time we went out to uh, the Bay Area, and I was just the people we were hanging out with in the punk scene were just constantly correcting us because we were from Chicago, right?
Yeah.
And so if we saw a bum on the street, we'd say, "Oh, there's a bum," or whatever. And no, 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 you don't say that. You say homeless. So we're constantly being corrected on things like that. And God forbid, I referred one time to the girl watching the door at Gilman Street as a girl. I said, "Oh, where'd that girl go who was watching the door?" She's not a girl, she's a woman. I was like, all right. Uh, and it was kind of funny and it was kind of charming in a way, but it was also like they were dead serious. And of course that stemmed from kind of to a large extent, I think, a lot of these people, not a lot, but a significant number of these people were raised by academics, by professors at a very liberal school at UC Berkeley, and they grew up in Berkeley, which is a very liberal city with a long, at that time, what seemed like a long history of political leftism. Um, growing up that way, that was completely normal to them. Whereas where I grew up in a Democratic neighborhood. Everybody voted Democrat. Um, and
Chicago, right?
what's that?
outside of Chicago, right? Illinois?
Yeah, so it was, it was kind of a mixture of, um, it was kind of like a lot of blue collar, but blue collar people who maybe own their own businesses. So they were out on the job every day pouring concrete or landscaping and everything, and they got their hands dirty, but they were like the guys who owned the business. So it was that kind of neighborhood, and everybody voted Democrat, right?
Mhm.
But it was a very different thing from what was going on out there because it was about, you know, it was about supporting a party that was for working people in the middle class and, that supported unions and all that kind of thing. It wasn't so much about, kind of radical, cops are bad and, like all that kind of stuff. And women should be spelled with a Y because we don't want the word men in there. Um, so it was pretty radically different. And like I said, I found out it wasn't just from going to California. I found out before then, like there's not a lot of room um, to be an individual in punk. And so to my mind, there are two kinds of people who get into punk. There's the people who get into it and go, I finally found a home. I finally found a place where I fit in. And then there's the people like me who get into it and go, this is great. I finally have a place where I can, be myself, kind of have a home, I guess, in a way. And then almost immediately realize, oh, no, no, this is just as bad as, the high school cliques and all that other stuff. So the band from pretty early on, took the approach of kind of being the outsiders among the outsiders, like criticizing the the I don't know what the word is, but like the provincialism, I guess, of punk rock
Mhm.
and um, and the rigidity of it, and which ultimately is the foolishness of it. So, like you look at some of these old Monty Python sketches, and uh, and then you see that reality, you see that playing out in reality by people who are deadly serious about it, and you know, you can't help but point and laugh at that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So that's us, and those are really our fans. So I
Mhm.
think a lot of times when people criticize me, there's this thing of like, oh, this guy has changed. And of course I have changed, but the irony of it is that the predominant attitude driving my band, if I'm guilty of anything, it's having not changed at all. I'm still driven by that. And that is still like the basis, the foundation of everything that I do
Yeah.
starts with I'm not on your team, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm on my team. I'm not on anybody else's team. And um and I have taken it on as my job to point and laugh at everyone who is on a team. And so our fan base, what these people don't understand who are like, oh, you've changed and this and that is not only was I always that way, but and hated for it, by the way, even back then,
Mhm.
you know, people somehow think, I don't know how, I guess because they weren't there, they think that I was like this beloved figure. No, I was fucking hated from day one. Um, and I don't like, to me, that's a role I liked playing. I embraced that and I still do. Um, and after all this time, that's our fan base. So a lot of these people don't understand, like, you think you're damaging me somehow by saying, "Oh, this guy's changed. I'm not going to support him anymore." But the overwhelming majority of the people who do come to our shows and listen to our music and buy our merchandise are totally on board with it.
Mhm.
So I found that whenever people are like, "Oh yeah, I'm done with you," the next thing I know, we're even more popular. So I think there are more people out there who appreciate that attitude. There are more people out there who say, oh no, that's punk rock, saying fuck you to everyone, like really and truly questioning everything.
Yeah.
Um, that's a that's something that people say they want, but they really don't want. They want it right up until the point when you question them. So I kind of say, people can do what they want. Everybody's welcome at our shows. I don't care what or who you are unless you're fucking with people. If you're fucking with people, you're going to get kicked out.
Yeah.
That's my only rule. But beyond that, I don't care who you vote for. I don't care who you like to have sex with. I don't care what your religion is. I don't care what your color is. You're welcome. You're,
Shit.
you're welcome at our shows if you're there to have fun. You're not welcome at our shows if you're there to fuck with people. To me, it's pretty simple.
Yeah. Yeah. Freaking I love it. I like that you said too. You guys are almost like the punk rockers of punk rock, which, like you said, it reminds me of the Cool Kids song you have now too. It's like, and
Yeah.
that happens within the punk rock scene. It's so annoying, and it becomes almost boring when the ideas become like mirrored, with the same kind of like crap. That's why you guys like pioneered it too, to where I know Blink's covered your stuff to where you brought that much more fun and um live your life and enjoy, have fun. Like that's the best form of it while you're doing your music, man. Yeah.
And be who
So
you are. Like kind of exalt in the fact that you're an individual and that you don't have to be like everyone else. And Cool Kids, it's interesting that you bring that up because that is like, to me, that's the band's theme song. And that is um, like, if there were to be a thesis statement about what the band is about, that song would be the statement. Um, and when you do that, as I found out, you can get a lot of people who really love you for it, and they're fans for life. But my God, the people who hate you are fucking furious with you, sometimes to the point of violence.
that's
Um, and all you can do is what we've always done, which is just kind of point and laugh. But when it comes to these things like, the Punk in the Park thing, like I guess the dude gave a couple $100, literally, like 220
two
bucks
hundred bucks. Yeah, give or take.
to the Trump campaign, along with a bunch of other money he gave to other things, which
Mhm.
nobody mentions. Um, but uh, but you get a band like the Dropkick Murphys, who's like, after they've made their money from Punk in the Park, announce that they're not going to play the shows anymore. Now, keep in mind, they weren't booked for any other shows. It's not like they're pulling out of an engagement. They're just saying, oh, in the future, we won't do this. And then they turn around and go out on a tour, the vast bulk of which are shows um, put on by Live Nation, who appointed somebody from the Trump administration to their board of directors and who gave at least a $500,000 to the Trump campaign. And
Yeah.
so, and when you point that out, people say, yeah, but there's nothing you can do about that. This is somebody where a guy pretended to be punk and he was really for Trump. And it's like, so what you're saying is you want to boycott this guy because he's a poser. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And
Yeah.
and I find that so embarrassingly childish that I can't help but point that out. It's like, you remember that movie, what was it called? Roger Rabbit. Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Okay.
And and the rabbit is hiding, right? He's behind this wall. He's hiding from this guy who's trying to get him, the guy who wants to eliminate him. And the guy, in order to find him, starts knocking on the wall in different spots, going, and the reason he's doing it is because he knows this character can't fucking resist. And he's back there, like practically bursting, trying not to respond to that. And finally just loses it and screams 2 bits. to finish the shave and the haircut knock that the guy's doing. And that's kind of me when it comes to this stuff. I find it basically impossible to not say anything when these kind of situations come up, because they are so Python-esque and they are so deliciously absurd that it seems to me you have to comment on that. You have to point at that, so that other people who may not be aware of it can see it and have a really good laugh and have some joy in their lives over the foolishness of other people.
Yeah, man. Like I said, what was so I guess like what they some people expect or whatever, the punk rock police, like, okay, all these bands should boycott or pull out of Punk in the Park, where you get a bunch of, like, I like Dropkick Murphys, but it was cool. You could go to a festival and hear all these different ideas and songs and get
Hey, come here.
they
Sorry, my dog's freaking out. Come here.
it's all good. But as they do this, they put it on literally Twitter and Instagram, about them pulling out or whatever, or criticizing it, which gave millions to the Trump campaign. It's like, so what are we really doing? We're just fighting ourselves. We're just fucking fans to not be able to see bands. That's how I saw it. But to
Well,
each his own and respect. But
it's funny too, because a lot of people, I remember this, and it's still the case, where people are like, oh man, the people who were like always saying music should be free, they were just so pleased when file sharing came around. But then after that, all of that obviously was co-opted. And it was co-opted by who? Well, the biggest corporations. So they were just thrilled that there's all this free music on YouTube, right? And like that's the way it should be, and it's like, yeah, the bands shouldn't be making money, but that only works to the extent that you're willing to ignore the fact that somebody's always making money. And you are now in this scenario where you think it's better for Google to make billions of dollars from bands' content while the bands and labels don't get paid. And that's the position you've put yourself in. And it's odd how when people do that, they just ignore that part of it and pretend like that's not a reality. But since somebody's always making money, well, why shouldn't the bands make money off their own music? So it's a mentality that, if taken to its logical conclusion, would mean essentially the end of rock and roll, because a band would form, they'd put out one album, and then they'd have no way to survive or continue after that, so they'd break up. And going back to Tim Yohannan and Maximum Rock and Roll, that was basically his theory on how punk should operate. Like he thought the death of the hippie movement was money. All these bands started making money, and that killed everything. So the way that punk was going to survive and be a genuine, force, was by massive turnover. There would be none of these bands that stuck around because, in Tim's point of view, bands only made one good record, their first record. And so there was no need for them to be around anyway. So like the concept that that somebody could be talented, like a talented songwriter, and evolve over time and do interesting new things, some of which you might not like, but they could go down these different paths, and maybe some of them are dead ends, and maybe some of them open up these really interesting new pathways. That concept didn't exist with Tim and with a lot of the people who thought the way that he did. And to me, that's, you're just completely, you're turning everything into this very one-dimensional thing that is really no longer art. It's just, the irony of it is that it just becomes totally disposable, of the moment junk that loses its relevance almost immediately until the next new flashy thing comes around. I mean, I thought I thought at the time, and I still think there was a terrific irony in that this music that kind of came about as a reaction to the increasingly plastic and disposable nature of the world should itself, by its purists, become like the apogee of that. That was, I thought, a terrific and hilarious irony.
Yeah, yeah. It gets boring too if you have that, which
It gets unbelievably boring.
yeah, and quick to criticize things like that, and people forget. I mean, maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think even with like the Ramones, they had very wide ideas politically, but their music came out freaking great. And so it's like, what are we going to do? Boycott? Anyhow, I can go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, no, and that's, I, I think, you hear a lot of like, I can't listen to this comedian anymore, or I can't listen to this band anymore. And I think when I hear that, I always think, if you knew even the stuff that's publicly available about some of the greatest rock bands and musicians that there have ever been, because a lot of people don't. But if you knew just that, you'd have nothing decent to listen to. If you knew all the stuff that we don't know, the stuff that hasn't come to light yet, I mean, what kind of life have you lived? Have you lived such an exemplary life? You have no skeletons in your closet. You have no, huge, embarrassing mistakes in your past. Who are you? You're not human. But you want to hold people to that standard, and it actually bothers you to the point where you can't listen to the music. And I mean, I think this is a fundamental misunderstanding of art. We believe that all those feelings that we get from art are supposed to be reflected in the character of the artist, but that's insane. And that's never been the case. Wagner created unbelievably great music, and from all accounts, as far as I could tell, was a pretty lousy person. He was exceptionally anti-Semitic. I mean, anti-Semitism was very common in his time and place. But even for that time and place, this guy was beyond the pale. He was just a pretty loathsome person in many ways, and that's true of a lot of the great composers. But to give up that music, that would be lunacy. I mean, basically, if you think there's something about the person that is reflected in their art, then it would seem to me that what is being reflected is the most basic, unadulterated, best version of that person. I'm not even saying that's the way it is, but it seems to me, if you wanted to go down that path, basically you're saying this is the ideal person. If he only embraced his good qualities and only became the best person that he could be and didn't have any flaws, this is him. And this is reflected in his music or his art. That I could at least buy that, I could at least understand that. But the idea that, yeah, this guy believes things that I think are wrong or even evil, and he did this or did that, and that was wrong and bad, and therefore I can't listen to the music. They misunderstand what we were talking about at the beginning of this conversation, which is that it's not about the artist. The artist is kind of this conduit through which this stuff comes. And when it gets into the hands of the audience, it's not his anymore. It's only his in the technical legal sense. But he or she does not own it anymore. It's now owned by the audience. And I think people ought to work very hard to have faith in that and to understand that, for instance, Wagner's music or Beethoven's music, Beethoven could be a good guy, but was also a big pain in the ass a lot of the time. But once that music became public, he no longer owned that. When it touched people in really profound ways, it became theirs. So who he is as a person is totally irrelevant. And I think that's one of the fundamental misunderstandings of our time. And we don't have time to get into it. I think there are reasons for it that kind of go back to the early post-Enlightenment Romantic era, and then going through the early 20th century with kind of the influence of Freud on art. But basically, it's become very, we assume that if somebody says I in a song, they're talking about themselves, unless it's really, really obvious they're not. And we assume that music is supposed to be about self-expression and that art is supposed to be about self-expression. And I reject that completely. I don't give a shit about you expressing yourself. I care about me. I care about the effect it has in me. You as the artist, fuck you. I'm not interested in you. I don't care about you. I have people in my life who I know and love. I care about them. I don't care about some stranger and his problems and his need to confess those problems in song form. Like your songs are not supposed to be your therapy, right? So you're trying, if you're any good, you're trying to capture something universal that goes way beyond the best lyrics you could ever write. It's not about your meaning. Your meaning is largely irrelevant. What you're trying to do is you're trying to stir something in somebody, in your audience, that cannot be put into words. You're trying to capture and communicate that thing that we have no words for, that ultimately, for all of us, is the reason why we get out of bed in the morning. It's not something you couldn't put in words. It's not political. It's a thing of the spirit. And that's our job, is to speak to that and to speak to people maybe through rock and roll who can't or don't get that through other forms of music. You know, if your aim is anything else, I would say you're doing it wrong.
Fucking hey, man. You're right. It's so limiting. Like you said, with I'll even use, a comedian. Like the jokes are still funny, and I have
Right.
friends that are like trying not to laugh because they have to boycott the dude or whatever. I'm like, it's still funny. What are you doing to yourself? Like, you can separate
I
it,
don't
but yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you go back and listen to the early Bill Cosby albums.
Hmm.
To me, they're as funny as ever.
We're
That
supposed to
was
pretend they're not funny anymore. Like,
yeah,
we're pretending. We're pretending they're not funny anymore. They're fucking
right.
funny. He's a piece of shit, right? Maybe, probably. I think so, but
Yeah,
it's not
I mean,
about the comedy.
I think it's pretty indisputable that he's done some really evil things, but
Yeah.
those records are still funny. He was one of the greatest stand-ups of that time, and his TV show was, fairly revolutionary. Not, I mean, he had several, but the Cosby Show was, whatever its faults, it was
Hmm.
a pretty revolutionary thing for Black Americans, and um, and so whatever his flaws are, what he did is so much greater than those flaws. And the reason it's greater is because it goes beyond him as an individual. He created something that's bigger than himself. And if we want to shrink that down and make it equal to the man, even the best man, even the greatest man we can imagine, then we're selling ourselves short. We are giving up something really important because we are diminishing the greatness of that art to match the man. And the problem is, men aren't great. We have greatness in us, but we aren't great. We're severely flawed. We're broken. We're guaranteed to disappoint. Anybody who looks at us with a measuring stick of even the most mainstream measure of morality that we could come up with, the most mainstream baseline, I should say, of morality, everyone's going to fall short of that. Everyone,
Yeah.
even the ones doing the measuring. And if we insist on diminishing art to that level, then we lose, because we don't get the only thing that art has to offer. We reduce it to political messages. Essentially, we reduce it to propaganda. It becomes an intellectual thing rather than a thing of the spirit. And to me, that's living in hell, to live without art and what it brings to you. I mean, this is, outside of my kids, it's the most important thing in my life. Art, literature, music, painting.
Yeah.
Those are by far, again, outside of my kids, by far the most important things to me in life. And I refuse to lower those things to a simple black and white base level material uh, uh, thing. It's not art anymore when you do that. It's just another thing. And if it's just another thing, then you can take it or leave it. And I can't take it or leave it, and I don't want to. And I've met too many people, and anybody who's been in a band for any length of time and had any success has had this experience. I've met too many people, and every time I go out and play, literally without exception, I meet people who tell me that this changed their life. I meet people who tell me that this song or this album saved their life. Literally, I was going to kill myself, and then I listened to this record or this song. So if you're entitled to reduce that to whatever you want, but if you want that out of me and you expect me to play that game, you're out of your fucking mind. I don't look at my stuff that way, and I can't, because I've seen the effect it has, and it has so much more of an effect on a person in their life than anything political ever could. It transcends everything. And to try to reduce that to something that's fundamentally material or political is about as anti-art as I can imagine.
Anti-punk as well, rather my
Well,
job.
yeah, I mean, that goes without saying, yes.
That's what I liked about it too. It wasn't Hollywood stuff. It was like working class music. They weren't. Ramones weren't good looking. PIL was like part of the anyhow. I really thank you for that. Do you have time for like two more questions? But how are you on the time?
Yeah, I'm over, but yeah, if we can do them quick, yes, absolutely.
Okay, I guess it was
And
kind of
doing them quick means me talking less. I know that. So
no, because I did want to read the lyrics real fast with what we hate, just so it's out there, and then I'll ask the question first. Then though, what is it like playing songs that maybe, and tell me that you obviously wrote songs, these songs like when you were very young, like in '91, just playing them that maybe you don't feel that way anymore. Will you just take them off the set list, or do you still play them? And I guess like what is that part like, or is that even really? Do you really even think about it?
well, no, I don't think about it because there are a lot of them where I'm like, yeah, I've played this song a bunch, I'm bored with it or whatever. But when I actually go out and perform it, I'm, it doesn't, none of that stuff matters anymore because, like I was saying before, it belongs to the audience now. So when I'm doing it now, very aware that I am doing their version of it. And I don't really understand it and I don't really see it that way. But the reason we're playing that song is for them. We're putting a set together with an audience in mind. It's not, here's what I feel good about and here's what I would prefer. Because if I were just picking what I would prefer, then our set would be probably 80 to 90%, songs from our last two or three albums, because that's, when you do this stuff, you're always happiest with your most recent stuff. I mean, any honest musician, if they're asked, what is your favorite album of yours? They're always going to say the last one they did. So, but that's not what the audience is there for. They're there to experience that feeling again that they experience when they listen to these songs, and to have that happen live. to have it happen in real time in a way that seems different than when you're just listening to a record, because you see the person and they're doing this thing and it takes on this even greater importance. So for me, I just feed off the audience. And the more the audience is into it, the more I'm into it. And I don't think it doesn't occur to me when I'm performing to think about like what I meant or, none of that stuff crosses my mind. It's all about in the moment and having an experience with the audience.
Cool. Thank you on that one. And then you said you do other artwork too. You got the book Like Hell. It's out of print. Is it going to be back in print? And do you got any other novels coming up?
Uh, it's not in print. I have no great urge to put it back in print because it's not good. I self-published a novel 2 years ago called Crow Black the Night, which you can get on our web store.
Okay.
If you just go to screechingweasel.com and click on store. And that's I would say a mystery novel, sort of suspense. I don't know what you would call. I don't know how you'd term it, but it's set in the rock and roll world,
Mhm.
and I had a lot of fun writing it. And I'm currently on my I don't know, third draft or so of a new one, which is a follow up to that one. So yeah, I mean that's my hobby. When I'm not doing music stuff, I like to write, and it's really nice because there's no pressure. My goal is the same as it was when I started music, which is let's try to not lose money if at all possible. But I'll probably lose a little money. So let's try to lose as little as possible. But the highest thing that I aspire to is breaking even. And it's just, I'm really fortunate to have the time to do that, and to do something that is artistic, but that is also, I don't have to have any kind of financial success or commercial success with it in order to keep doing it. I mean, I'm very, very lucky to have succeeded in my music to the point where I can, um, do these projects and, just for the sake of doing them rather than because I need to, be able to market them or whatever.
Cool, man. So we got a couple there. We can get Crow Black on Crow Black the Night on the website. Okay, so then last little bit, I'll read the lyrics. If anything jogs my mind, I'll ask in a moment. Or if you want to say anything, say it. But
Okay.
What We Hate, Screeching Weasel, September of '91. Again, you said you were like what, 22? So long.
I was 23 when it came out. I was 22 when I wrote it.
Okay, long time, man. There isn't destiny. The way things go, I don't think so. The changes that alter us are a product of our own volition, and we become what we hate. It's not hard to figure out that you're scared when you act so much better. You're holding on to something we can't have, but hands still circle. You're still getting old. And
Yeah, I would just interject there. I wish I had done a better job with that line because I found that people don't understand that I'm just talking about a clock. I'm just talking about the passage of time, the hands of a clock turning. And I didn't write that line particularly well.
okay, but yeah, cool. I like the way I'm reading it. It's going right into what you said about this. Like, yeah, we become what we hate as we grow, man. So,
Yes.
yeah. Okay. And we become what we hate. Do you believe in the lies that shape your world? Do you believe in your own fictitious immortality? The world won't end while you walk the earth. And when you realize that, your life don't matter. You'll turn to something to help. You forget that you forget that you're only young once, old forever. Wow, dude.
Yeah.
Those lyrics are so good too, man. Like,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised. I don't know how good they are, but I'm kind of surprised that conceptually at that age, I was able to even think that way, let alone, articulate it enough so that it could even be in a song. Um, but I always felt, I was like a 60-year-old man when I was 18. So I always kind of felt older and like I had an
So,
old guy view of the world. Um, but yeah, it's just so funny because I don't know how you could read those lyrics and think that it's a criticism of people who become what they hate. I just don't get that. To me, it's so abundantly clear that it's saying this is inevitable, and if you resist it, um, you don't end up in a good place, which is the point of the bridge, right? Do you believe in the lies that shape your world? Do you believe in your own fictitious immortality? And then even going into the third verse, the world won't end while you walk the earth. So it's this kind of thing saying it's not all about you and your beliefs. Like this is a moment in time and you're going to continue to evolve as a person if you're lucky, you
yeah,
know.
yeah. It's a
But
very humbling
it's
song, I think. Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, and the lyric came actually from, or the title rather came from just I can't remember who it was, but somebody kind of criticizing someone with that line. Oh, that person became what they hated, or you're becoming what you hated, or whatever. You used to hear that a lot.
Yeah.
And that was the jumping off point for me, asking the question, well, wait a second, is that necessarily a bad thing? Like, why does somebody become what they hate? So, I kind of like listened to it and said, okay, I'm gonna take this seriously and actually look at the implications of it. And it's actually kind of interesting, I found. When I started thinking about it, like it actually made sense to me that we should become what we hate to some degree, because if we don't, we become cartoon characters.
Yeah, and like you said, so insightful for. I mean, and were you making money at that time enough to be in the band only? Like, I guess what were you going through?
No, not when that album was written. It was after that album came out that we're able to earn enough just to scrape by.
Okay.
Um, but before, when I was writing that stuff, no. And in fact, um, I had no, that was kind of us going from a more hardcore punk influenced style to a straight up, more pop punk style. And um, and I had no reason to believe that was going to be successful. So when I was writing those songs, it was kind of like, if I can just find somebody to put this record out, I know it's going to flop and nobody will ever put another one out, but I know these songs are good. And so that was my goal, just get it on a record. There was never any goal of it's going to make money or a ton of people are going to hear it, but just like these are really good songs that deserve to be on a
Yeah.
record. And, who knows, maybe 20, 30 years from now, somebody will come across it and really like it. But I was quite convinced that it was going to flop because that kind of music at the time was not popular at all. It was completely out of fashion.
Yeah. You guys kind of pioneered it to an extent. I always thought too. So who did? Was it Kung? Were you guys on Kung Fu or no? Well, who put it out?
No,
No.
Lookout Records.
Oh, Lookout. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Sweet. Yeah. And that's fun. Man, yeah, and then, I mean, to each their own, however they interpret it. We discovered that in the how with Dummy Up even, but man, what an awesome song. I want to thank you so much for giving me this time to pick your brain, finding out where these songs came from, where you were doing it. Anything you think you want to add to either song or
No, I've already said too much.
it's good. Yeah, and thank you for playing shows and you guys put on a kick-ass show and everything too. So hopefully you get out to the desert again soon. I'm out here in
Yeah,
Phoenix.
man, I mean, the band is more fun than it's ever been. I mean, this past year was just everybody had a blast. We had a great time playing, meeting fans, seeing old friends, and just hanging out together. You know, everybody in the band gets along real great. So it's a lot of fun going out and doing it now. And we intend to continue that in 26, which will be our 40th year.
40 years, man. Wow.
Yeah.
That's freaking badass. And just,
Never thought I'd see that.
all right. Well, I will let you go. We're already over time. I apologize for that. So I'll let you go, man. Thank you so much again. You rock.
Thank you. Bye-bye.